Well, thank you all for being here. You know, Jack and I have a lot in common. He went to UMass Boston. I went to UMass Boston. He got stoked about marine science at a field station on Nantucket Island. So did I. So you may be wondering, I know you've got this question in your mind, so I'll answer it. No, we didn't go to undergrad at the same time. Although I would have really enjoyed that. So yeah, in this talk, I'm going to focus on some of the beautiful ways. You've seen them here at Whale Fest too, for example, with the whale safe. Oh, okay. How's that? Is that better? Okay. Mm, okay, louder. We can ask this. Our yeah, yeah. Okay. So I'll try to enunciate and speak loudly. Uh, and is it? Yeah. Everybody else, can you hear me? All right. Okay. Great. Great. Well, um, if you did anybody see the whale safe fishing gear for the crab fishery out there? Yeah, yeah, that's one of those beautiful stories. And so I'm going to tap into a few areas where people are coming together in common purpose voluntarily to make this habitat safer and healthier, and I love it. So let's first introduce the habitat that we're focused on. Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary is identified by the boundaries that you can see drawn in black here. And I am going to find the control for this. Flip it 180 and you got it. So there's the sanctuary, of course, and this sanctuary is in the middle of really important feeding habitat for at least these three species of whales, blue, fin, and humpback. These are the biologically important areas defined by Callibacitus et al. So here we are right in the center of this important habitat. And here's the sanctuary boundaries once again. We're zooming in a bit, and all of the audio data that I collect and analyze comes from the Monterey Accelerated Research System. It's a cabled observatory. So in fact, this location is connected to shore by a 32-mile cable right to Moss Landing, unlimited power and communications to the deep sea. Really useful. And this sea surface temperature image shows something I'm going to talk about a fair amount, which is upwelling, coastal upwelling, which is responsible for not only the invention of the wetsuit, which it is, especially the plume that emanates from Año Nuevo and comes into Monterey Bay. And it's also, of course, fuels the ecosystem because that upwelled water is not only cold, but nutrient rich. It fuels the growth of microscopic algae that we can see from space by looking at ocean color. And we can use the blue and green light that we receive at a satellite sensor and quantify the abundance of microscopic algae, in this case, the pigment within them in the upper ocean. So you can see these upwelling plumes feeding the growth of microscopic algae, which ultimately feeds the whole ecosystem. So what are some of the threats we think about and care about? Of course, again, entanglement, as I mentioned earlier, beautiful work going on right here. And it's not just Oceana leading that, but also this willing partnership, this voluntary cooperation from fishermen and nonprofit and governmental organizations, all coming together with ideas and iteration to improve how this can work better. And so I really enjoyed talking with Stephen, for example, the fisherman who's taken the original designs and developed them further to make them work better for fellow fishermen. And NOAA, of course, is the stewardship of NOAA is central here, and they're able to quantify the nature of this problem through time and discover things like marine heat waves can cause elevated levels of entanglement because when the ocean has a warming event, a marine heat wave, the foraging habitat of the whales is compressed closer to shore, which leads to greater interactions with the fishing gear. So that understanding those fundamentals that's essential for solving the problem. Collision, of course, is a primary cause of mortality in whales. It's hard to quantify because we don't see many of the collisions, but large, fast-moving vessels can break the spines of the whales if they hit them, and the whales get trapped and drown. But they can also be injured by props, etc. So International Whaling Commission has a great deal of good information about this particular problem. And I'll focus on this with regard to two aspects: a natural forcing of collisions, in a way. What does nature do to cause heightened risk? And what are people doing to reduce the risk? Noise is also a threat because these animals live in a medium that transmits sound so efficiently. We can see an animal if they're up close, especially if we're on a tagging boat, but can we can hear a blue whale, for example, from 100 miles away. Sound travels phenomenally well, which means our noise travels phenomenally well. And here's an example of, this is a spectrogram, and color, the intensity of color represents the level of sound received at our sensor right here. And so you can see warmer colors are higher levels of noise. And all of this red here is from a large shipping container that was transiting across the mouth of the bay from here to here, which in time is here to here. A number of hours where we're having this really elevated noise. And you can see after the noise, the ship passes the Sur Plateau, and that kind of blocks the noise transmission to our receiver. Any whales in our area would have gotten, breathed a sigh of relief because their sounds could be heard. This is all now a fin whale calling. It was probably calling during this time, but other whales wouldn't be able to hear it because of the ship noise, at least if they were in this area. So noise is definitely a problem. So risk happens, of course, at this intersection of anthropogenic and natural factors. And for this topic, I am going to focus on blue whales because we have the best data for them. Yeah, and as I say, we can observe their behavior when they're near the surface, and light can come to our eyes and our cameras. There's no substitute for that. It's so valuable. But they don't have to dive far below the surface when light no longer can reach them or us reach us from them and tell us about their lives. And to put another number on it, we can hear a blue whale if it's anywhere within an area thousands of square miles around our one little hydrophone sitting on the seafloor. So we have a huge listening footprint that extends the reach of scientific sensing. And so let's look at that range. Here is again, the Mars Observatory. Now I'm showing the cable path to Moss Landing. This black line is a result of a numerical model that takes into account everything you need to know to understand how sound would make it from a whale that calls to a receiver sitting on the seafloor. And if a whale was anywhere within this boundary, we would hear it at the observatory. The other information on this was enabled by tag data. This white circle is the GPS location of a blue whale tagged by the Goldbogen Lab at Stanford. And in addition to having ordinary omnidirectional hydrophones, like this one in my hand, on the observatory, we have something called an acoustic vector sensor. And what that does is it measures the three-dimensional particle motion caused by the sound wave. So we can say, not just that's a blue whale, we can say it's over there. So we get spatial information about the whales just by listening. And I'm going to highlight information from tracking whales by listening. Oh, yeah. We're going to first, I guess I do need it now. Cindy, you know what? We're going to listen on the next presentation. I've got a subwoofer here for you to feel the whales a little bit more than you otherwise could. And I'll do that in the next presentation. But I think I was born to listen. That's me. Cup in my ears. And I know that's my mom's handwriting. So she just gave birth and they made her fill out the card, But anyway, yeah. So we will listen to those. And so the B calls that you'll listen to later when we have a musical segment, lovely musical segment, is the primary call we use because it's the one they produce the most. It's a long, low frequency tonal, so we can lock onto that signal and get a really accurate bearing estimate. And so working with the Naval Postgraduate School, Paul Leary, Kevin Smith, we deployed that acoustic vector sensor on Mars. It's their sensor and they give us data. And I took that data for this 3-year period and tracked blue whales. Then a tiny, tiny metal screw holding the sensor in a tripod corroded, dropped the sensor, and that was the end of the time series. The ocean is tough on equipment. So now the context, let's look again at the blue whale biologically important area along the entire US West Coast here. And let's zoom in on where the blue whales are typically seen. Now, these biologically important areas are based on decades of sighting data. So really, really well-founded description. And the deeper purple is sort of their core biologically important area and then sort of extended. And if we zoom in, that's what we have here. This is where blue whales are typically seen. Now the honeycomb pattern overlaid, if a whale was in any one of those cells, we could hear it with a sufficient signal strength to reliably point to the whale. So that's our listening footprint. These black lines are the recommended tracks or the shipping fairways. And if a whale is anywhere out here, they're more likely to be struck by a ship. As simple as that. So if we talk about estimating the bearing from our receiver on the observatory to a whale, if they're anywhere within this arc defined by the white lines, it's higher risk habitat. And so that's our reference. And this is actual ship traffic, over a year. And the whales, of course, occupy continental shelf, slope, and deep water habitat. And this is that classic upwelling that originates at Point Año Nuevo. So here we have those 3 years of acoustic vector sensing, and of course the signal available to us to track whales, it rises and falls every year. And it rises in the summer because the whales begin to exhibit that singing behavior. It falls not because they're not singing, but just because they're singing too far away from us. They've migrated south to the breeding habitat and we can't hear them, but we can track them. They went south. So this is just, I'm actually not going to focus on this, but this is the hard-won data. 3 years of quality-controlled bearings to whale calls. So a color represents the total amount of time in a day that a whale was heard calling from a 20-degree bearing sector around the compass through a 6-7 month period. And what I want to draw your attention to is two things. Here we're looking at east, south, west, north, and that's relative to the receiver. So if a whale is directly east of us, they're in the bay. If they're directly west of us, they're offshore. These two peaks that happen every year, a little bit variably, point to the upwelling centers north and south of the bay. We learned that the whales tend to prefer habitat where deep water wells up to the surface. But what we're going to focus on here is a longer time scale. How does this change from year to year? And you'll notice right away over these years, this shaded zone is that bearing sector toward the shipping lanes, the high risk habitat. So if you see a greater proportion of calling from this shaded zone, the whales are spending more time in high risk habitat. So let's look at what that was. This simply says that they were well sampled every year, over 100, well over 100 days, nearly 150 in each year. We have good data for this. And if you look at the whole year, what you can see is the daily exposure numbers for being in that higher risk habitat rose over this 3-year period significantly. But what's interesting is if we separate out summer, it did not rise at all. In fact, it fell in the 3rd year, but it was mainly the fall and winter when we saw the whales spending a greater proportion of their time in high-risk habitat. So what could cause that? Why would they spend more time farther offshore? Well, as Jack showed phenomenally well, they are after krill. And these are krill abundances measured by NOAA Fisheries in their annual survey that spans this whole region of the coast. And you can see a huge increase. This is a log scale, so that's more than an order of magnitude increase in the median krill catch at all of these stations. So food was clearly much greater. Food resources were much greater in the 3rd year, 2021, compared to the 1st year of that study. COVID affected sampling in 2020, so it's not shown here. Now, krill, of course, grow from upwelling, phytoplankton growth. And what we see here is a coastal upwelling transport index for spring, summer, and fall, winter. And the first thing to notice is that fall, winter, which is the time when we see the whales spending more time offshore, there is not a positive trend. There's not an increase in the upwelling. Instead, further in the summer, you do not see a strong trend that would be causing upwelling to flow farther offshore and therefore perhaps drawing the whales. It's the spring summer upwelling that really matters here. That critical period of building up a huge input of nutrients that fuel growth of algae and krill and ultimately whales. So there's a long time lag between what the ecosystem is doing and where the whales are spending their time. So some of the things we have learned from studying humpback whale song, this is the first thesis manuscript of Will Astrike, who was at Hopkins with the Goldbogen Lab, and then he did a postdoc with us at Monterey. And during his PhD research, he found that first of all, you can hear when blue whales are migrating south because they change how much they sing day versus night. And if you know that, you can then see how that changes from year to year. And in his 6-year study here, he found that blue whales will stay here, inhabit this biologically rich habitat up to 4 months longer if the ecosystem is more highly productive, if it's feeding them well. They can pack the calories into those massive bodies and store it, and they do if the ecosystem gives them that opportunity. So, and of course, that intraannual variation that I showed, where they're moving onshore, offshore, that's one factor. Will they encounter ship strike risk right here? Well, what Will is showing is that they'll encounter it up to 4 months longer if the ecosystem is feeding them well. And that's what this shows here. This is the biologically effective upwelling index across those 6 years, and this is the day of the year when they transition into migration. So you can see that very clear relationship between physical forcing of the ecosystem and the behavior of the whales. So safer and healthier habitat. That is the focus, but I wanted to emphasize the natural factors before we go into what humans are doing with care and concern in their hearts. This is one of my favorite programs, absolutely. Protecting Blue Whales and Blue Skies. It's a voluntary partnership involving the shipping industry, most importantly, but of course, the nonprofit organization, as well as Marine Sanctuary Foundation that runs it, and the ports that communicate with the shipping companies. And the idea is if you slow down ships, there are multiple benefits. They're less likely to strike a whale in the first place because the whale has more time for not being hit. The ship operators have more time to respond if they see a whale. And if they are struck, it's less likely to be a mortality. And so but in addition to that, when you slow down a ship, they produce less noise. So you're creating a healthier acoustic habitat. And then lastly, of course, they're putting out less air pollution and using less fuel, which is an economic benefit. So a really brilliant program here. Last year at their award ceremony for the shipping companies, I brought a subwoofer more capable than that. I filled the warehouse with blue whale song so they could feel gratitude from the whales they're helping to protect. You know, I got invited back. Here's the growth of that program. They started in 2017, and maybe, starting with one shipping company, they're now up to roughly 50 shipping companies and 1,000 ships, voluntarily slowing down 2/3 of the year. And we can check their compliance because we have automatic identification system tracking of their ships. And so what I want to highlight here is this is well before the voluntary program was in place. And this is just quantifying the percent of ship speeds less than that so-called whale safe 10 knots. Here you can see mostly blues and getting into some greens and yellows, so you're not very high levels of slowing down. During the voluntary speed reduction periods of these 2 years, Look at this warming should warm your heart. It just means a high level of compliance and safer whales, not just in the sanctuary, but outside of it. Now, a ship can choose to just not go through the sanctuary and go faster around it, which also creates a risk along the boundaries of the sanctuary. And we are looking at that as well, as I'll show you in a minute. But here's that noise reduction. This is showing the hour of day and over this period, 8-9 year period. And what you're looking at are shipping noise levels. We know where frequency they put the noise into, and we can quantify that. Where you see red, it's noisier. It's a tougher communication environment for whales. Where you see blue, it's quieter. And look at the first VSR period. Right away, you begin to see that. Unfortunately, we couldn't record this one, but look at this one, the most recent. That blue is, it's a soothing, quiet environment. Certainly much less noise, and it's wonderful to see. However, this is that note I wanted to highlight. Wherever you see blue, there are fewer vessels, there's less minutes per day of these participating vessels in the sanctuary. Some of them are choosing to skirt the sanctuary boundaries. And this type of analysis gives us the foundation for talking with them. Like, hey, you're doing great. You could do better. And we know which ship did that. No, they're wonderful. Earlier this week, I got to go over to the boatyard in Moss Landing, right near where I work. I spoke with Wendy and Marina, and they gave me a tour of the boat that you can stand on now. And this is another brilliant project. They're building the first hybrid electric whale watching vessel for being, they've highlighted all the benefits of this, but it is becoming a reality, and it's very exciting and inspiring. Monterey Bay Ecotours does run this. Left Coast Composites is doing the brilliant work to make that vessel light, solid, and quiet. And so it will be doing whale watching tours out of Moss Landing Harbor year round. They already operate a smaller one in Elkhorn Slough. And so this is just another great project where people are coming together. In this case, Monterey Bay Air Resources District is the sponsor, helping to make this happen. There it is being built, one of the two twin hulls. With fuel savings, 31,000 gallons per year, less emissions, and reduced noise pollution. Yeah, and here's all the partners in that project. California Climate Investments, MBARD, California Air Resources Board, and Monterey Bay Ecotours. It's just great to see people coming together. We need these good stories. And Whale Safe is another, they are actually trying to help with real-time alerts to ships so that ships can know when whales are in the area. And they're using sighting data and acoustic detections for hourly updates so that shipping operators can know when ships are in the area. And we're just beginning to work with them, providing real-time detection of bluefin and humpback whales. Those are the species that they're focused on from our cable observatory. And this represents an hour where you get a visual view of the soundscape itself and independent metrics that quantify the acoustic presence of these species. But the idea is you have the metric and you also have the ground truth. So an experienced person who is checking these before they're released can confirm that these are accurate. Lastly here, I want to highlight Whale Spotter. It's all of that I've mentioned so far is wonderful, but ultimately, when you're on the up on the bridge of a ship and you're moving toward your destination, sure would be great if you had the ability, during daylight at least, to get far path alerts to when you're approaching whales, so you can make subtle course corrections and avoid contact with those whales. Oh, actually, how are we doing on time?
No, we're at 3:12, so we got a little bit.
Okay, great. So I'm just gonna speed it up. These are infrared images of the whale spouts, and then they can use a color camera and zoom in and even see that it's a humpback whale 2 nautical miles away. So impressive. And that the bridge gets those alerts and can adjust their course to avoid hitting the whales. So that was my last highlight. And we are going to be continuing into another topic with music. We're going to tap into the music composed by humpback whales. And we're going to explore a discovery made by Lucy. And she and her brother are going to play music in the form that she discovered in a whale song. And she's going to play also with Nick for a different type of compositional element that Lucy discovered in whale song. But in the interest of time, I think we might kind of roll. So if you wouldn't mind maybe holding the questions, we'll just roll into this one. Yeah. We're going to set up some musical equipment after. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's right. Oh, yeah. Mhm.
So it would be this one, correct? That one right there. Okay, great. And this was okay to close, correct?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Let's get that up for you. And then with the audio within presentation, just with the audio levels.
Let's go ahead and
Just the first video. So
folks, get comfortable. We're going to have a real treat for you. John's going to treat us to some wonderful music, and then we'll have music in another form. So be getting setting up here.
Yeah. Thanks again, Dan. Yeah, we're ready.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks to those who stayed with us. Is anyone from Monterey Symphony here? I sent an email to maybe the wrong email address. I wanted them to hear whale compositions. So, okay, that last talk was somewhat of a gauge for my timing. So I'm gonna move along so you can hear this, hear about the beautiful discovery made by Lucy, and hear her relate that to human musical composition. But I think I do want to focus on the species that really has the most elaborate forms of song that we can hear anywhere. The humpback whales. I first encountered a humpback whale here in Monterey Bay. I was going out to deploy equipment, but I couldn't deploy it because a humpback whale was spy hopping all around the stern of the boat, swimming underneath it. After an hour, we had to go somewhere else to deploy this robotic submarine. And that's what struck me first was their curiosity. Now, fast forward 26 years and we have an autonomous vehicle, what I was originally trying to deploy with a camera on it, and look what it saw. And the vehicle's moving at about 1 meter per second. And this giant did not touch the vehicle. Following it for 20 minutes, but never touching it. So the research team today is Lucy, who is right there, and myself right there. You can see Lucy has changed in 15 years. I have not. We had gotten together at the beach in Santa Cruz for this visit. But over the years, I would be, especially during COVID, I'd be on a work call with Lucy's father, and I'd hear her practicing music in the background. So when Lucy approached me for an idea for her high school senior research project, the first thing that came to mind was, well, she knows musical composition. And humpback whales compose some fairly complex music. So I wonder what Lucy would hear and see in these humpback compositions. So that's where we're going today. You've seen this if you were here last. I am going to actually accelerate to get to the music first. I think that's what we really want to do. So I'm going to hit some really succinct highlights. Humpback whales are all along the West Coast, and we're right in the middle of important habitat for them. We're listening in a good place. I'm going to introduce this because in 1971, Humpback Whale Song made the cover of Science, which is a big deal. And it was the first time that people, in this case, Roger Payne, Scott McVeigh, published this. It's a description of the individual notes or units of song by a humpback whale. And like a song sheet, it wraps around, right? And you see a period of similar sounds switching to another set of sounds on and onward through these songs. An individual song can last more than 30 minutes, and they can remember it and repeat it. Everywhere you see bright colors against the blue background, that is sound produced by a singing whale. Humpbacks produce all this beauty and complexity. Blue and fin whales produce simpler songs. This is over a 10-year period, all of the days in which we recorded song from these species. Clearly, it's an important part of their lives. And we're not even hearing their singing on the breeding grounds. So let's listen to some of the sounds of whale songs. I'm going to get my phone from Cindy. Cindy's going to bring my phone because I have this special speaker to give you more of a sense of what their sounds are like, even though you're listening in air, and it would be so much richer if you were experiencing that sound in the water with the whale. But let's try it. Powering up. So these are two song notes from a blue whale call, an A call on the left and a B call on the right. And I'll play those in sequence. Let's not take away from the sound with rattling. Yeah, so those are two notes, and they're normally spread out by 30 seconds or so. So it takes a long time to get the rhythm of a blue whale song. So what we'll do is speed up the playback so you can hear the rhythm and structure.
Yeah, we don't want to. Yeah, we just gotta be careful. But we.
Okay.
You want to play it one more time?
Yeah, one more time. Thank you. Okay, that's all right. We do need it for some of the other slides though, so, oh, yeah, great. Let's go ahead and hit play one more time.
There should be a full screen at the top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, try it. I'm going to. What is our time now, Dan?
We have got about 38 minutes total
38
for
total?
the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, in that case, I'm going to go right to Humpback Whale Song. And
Microphone.
One more hand.
phone or microphone? Thank you for that. Okay, and Humpback Whale Song is the most elaborate. And here you see two iterations of a humpback whale song, each one approximately 15 minutes long. Starting here, having one theme, a second theme, third, fourth, fifth, probably just breathing at the surface and doing the song again. It is part of their culture and their cultural transmission. A whale population shares a song. They all sing essentially the same song, but when they hear the songs of other whales that they might encounter, for example, along a migration route, they incorporate new ideas into their songs. So this example paper showed how two whales traveling from the Indian Ocean around Australia to the Pacific Ocean, they joined a much larger populations of singers, and gradually at first, eventually completely, the song of the two replaced the song of the many. They liked it better. So I'm going to highlight very briefly what we learn when we study whale song and together with what's happening in the ecosystem. We learn that we can hear when whales transition to their southward migration because they change how they sing. We learned that they change the timing of their migration south to the breeding habitat by as much as a third of the year. We learned that humpback whales are relatively resilient because they can change the food that they consume when the ecosystem offers them a different opportunity, whereas blue whales can only eat krill. Humpback whales can switch to fish if krill are depleted. And we learned that blue whales track these coastal upwelling plumes, for example. So now I would like to invite Lucy to come up and introduce her research project, and then we will set up to play a sonata. So welcome, Lucy. Great. So here's your microphone.
Thank you.
And here's your pointer if you want to use it.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy, and I worked on a research project with Dr. Ryan last summer. So I came to him just wanting to do more research in the real science world, and he provided me with two humpback whale songs and a pretty open question of if I could find any human musical elements in these humpback whale songs. So at first, when I was analyzing these songs, I was just listening to them and they sounded like a lot of random patterns to me, and I couldn't figure out how I could find musical structures in them. But after a lot of repeated listenings, as well as from Dr. Ryan's advice, I used a software called Raven that allowed me to watch the visual spectrograms and listen to the whale songs at the same time. I was able to capture patterns that repeated throughout these songs called themes and connected them with musical structures. So, this is the first song that I analyzed. I discovered that it had a similar structure to a sonata structure. A sonata is a type of musical structure that I have played on the piano and the violin before, so I was familiar with it. And a sonata is defined by its three distinct structures of an exposition, development, and recapitulation. And the themes of the exposition and the recapitulation are repeated, so they're the same, and then the development has its own separate theme. So I'll demonstrate a little bit how this whale song has a sonata structure. Oh, oh it's okay. Thank you. Okay, so also this structure is sandwiched between an introduction and a coda, which means ending. So let's play the introduction pattern first of this humpback whale song. Okay, and then the coda, which is the ending. Okay, now for the actual sonata structure, the three middle sections. Here is the exposition, and try to remember the pattern heard in the exposition because it'll be the same pattern in the recapitulation. And here is the recapitulation, not exactly in order. So as you can hear, the exposition and recapitulation share the same theme. And finally, here's the development. And the development theme in itself actually has a kind of rising and then decreasing structure. So the middle of it is kind of the climax of this section and of the whole whale song. Okay, so now that you have heard a whale sonata, I'd like to invite Nick up, and we'll be playing a real human sonata for you to kind of show you the similarities. Okay. Before I begin, I'll demonstrate just the beginning of the three sections of the sonata first, so you get a feel of what it sounds like, and so you can pick it up when the whole piece is played. So this is the exposition. And then this is the development section. And then the recapitulation, which is the same theme. So you'll hear these while the song plays. And this song is called Concertino in the style of Vivaldi by Ferdinand Kuchler. Thank you. Now I'll move on to the second Will song. Okay, so the second Will song that I analyzed, it doesn't have as cool of a musical structure name as the sonata, but I called it ABAB structure. Okay, so this song has an intro and a coda, just like the song from before. But the pattern here that we see is theme A, theme B, theme A, theme B, with transitions in between. This kind of ABAB structure is seen a lot in pop songs. So let me demonstrate what each section sounds like. This is the intro. And then we have the coda at the ending. Oops. I think the recordings might be a little off from the patterns. Okay, this is the coda. Oops, sorry. One second. Okay, and then this is theme A. And then we have a transition in between theme A and theme B. And then theme B. Okay, so we're just playing like one round of theme A and theme B, but for the actual song, it's repeated A, B, A, B. Okay, so now I'll be playing a human form of an ABAB song. This is A Thousand Years by Christina Perry, and I'll be playing it in a violin duet with my brother Daniel. Okay, so this is pattern A of 1,000 years. And then pattern B. And so you'll hear both. Oh, thank you. You'll hear both of them repeated twice throughout the song. Thank you so much.